Those who have been following me for a long time have been waiting a lot for this video because this is the infamous MOSIN-NAGANT.
Let's take a closer look at what it's about.
You've definitely seen this in a lot of different movies and in quite a few video games. This in particular is a PU version with a scope mounted on top. I'll take this opportunity to talk a bit about the history and to debunk, on one hand, the myths that exaggerate the greatness of this military rifle. On the other hand, I want to debunk the myths of those who think it's complete garbage. Because those who know the MOSIN basically have two opinions. They either love it or adore it. Let it be clear that by know, I mean more by reputation. Because those who truly know this weapon can appreciate its development and the difficulty, often the engineering that was behind its design. About why certain choices were made that made the MOSIN what it is. To be clear, I absolutely love the MOSIN. It's not a great military rifle, and I'll try to explain exactly why. In 1886, something very important happens in the history of firearms. The French introduced the label. The label is the first standard issue rifle that uses smokeless powder. Smokeless powder offers several benefits over black powder. First, it doesn't create a big cloud of smoke, and second, it burns much better, so the bullet can travel much faster. Another key point is it leaves little residue inside the weapon. So, the invention of smokeless powder in '86 will create a real arms race for rifles, pistols, and especially machine guns. Does smokeless powder really make it possible to build machine guns? All nations are working to adopt a smokeless powder weapon as quickly as possible. As I said, the French were first in '86, followed by the British, and then the Germans in '88 with the Gewehr 88, their first military smokeless powder rifle. The Belgians, simply put, all the nations are adopting a modern weapon, and the Russians are still left behind. At that time, they still used the Burden II, a single-shot black powder rifle. So they decided to make a double leap in quality, to have both a smokeless powder rifle and a repeating rifle, not a single-shot one. In typical Russian style, a commission is assembled that begins to evaluate various proposals and has a whole series of requirements. For example, they want the rifle to be produced domestically. The competitions go on for several years, and in the end, two competent designs emerge, both very good. The one by MOSIN and the one by Nagant, Leon Nagant, who was a Belgian engineer. Essentially, three different rifles are tested. A single-shot MOSIN, a MOSIN with a magazine made by Nagant, and a Nagant rifle with, of course, his own magazine. In the end, the commission, with 14 votes to 10, decides that Nagant's rifle is the best. But they will still adopt the MOSIN for the simple reason that the MOSIN was produced and designed domestically. Essentially, the Russian arsenals were already ready to produce it. Remember, Russia was behind, so they wanted to produce this weapon as quickly as possible. Nagant was not very happy about this, since for him, his rifle had won. Also, they had used his magazine in the new Russian weapon, and he stirred up a legal storm. He sued the Russian government, and from that whole mess that arose, essentially, in the West, this rifle became known as the MOSIN-NAGANT, even though the Russians never called it that. At first, the Russians simply called it a rifle. Three-line infantry rifle. 3 lines or 3/10 of an inch, which indicates the caliber, that is 7.62 mm. It would later be known as MOSIN, but not MOSIN-NAGANT. While the MOSIN seems complex, its design is actually quite simple. That was the goal of the Russians, to be able to produce a relatively simple rifle that still met the requirements that had been set. These requirements caused certain mechanical oddities that somewhat compromised the MOSIN, making it less than ideal among military rifles. Another important consideration to make when we evaluate the MOSIN and compare it with other military rifles of the time is that essentially the MOSIN belongs to these. First generation bolt action with black powder. Other nations adapted and then developed second generation rifles. The Germans adopted the famous Gewehr 98, the British the short magazine Lee Enfield. The French used the Berthier and tried to replace the Lebel as best they could. The MOSIN, on the other hand, always remained the MOSIN. It stayed almost unchanged, except for being a bit shorter and with some changes to the sights, from the First World War to the Second World War and beyond. It should be seen as part of the first generation of repeating rifles using smokeless powder, and in that context, it's a good rifle. It's just that when there was a generational leap and the MOSIN didn't make it, it fell a bit behind. This one in particular that I have is a MOSIN-91-30 from the year 30, specifically the year of the modification, when they changed the sights and, above all, shortened it. As you can see already, it's not small because it takes up quite a bit of the frame, and above all, it's nice and heavy. The MOSIN, despite everything I've told you, still remains an iconic weapon. If guerrillas are still using it today, it must have something special. It's durable, it's solid, it's built to last, and it's definitely fun. But the best rifle in the world? Absolutely not. I admit I use the sniper version for a bit of clickbait because, well, people like them. After all, we know them from video games, they're a bit mythicized, but here you see, first of all, the regular version with the straight bolt handle instead of the curved one like on the sniper version. While here we have a short version, a carbine. This is a post-war Polish production. Obviously, with the MOSIN, you can't miss the very important bayonet. Another myth about the MOSIN is that it's not accurate. Surely it's not accurate by modern standards, but one very important thing, think about the bayonet. Since the muzzle flash when you shoot is almost deflected by the bayonet, the rifle is notoriously known for shooting to the side. If you don't use the bayonet, and many of those who test the accuracy of the MOSIN and say it's inaccurate, it's because they don't use the bayonet. And the sights are designed to compensate for this deviation caused by the bayonet. Many more experienced shooters simply readjust the sights. But those who don't know about this will tell you that the MOSIN is inaccurate. This is very important. Let's take a closer look at what this is about. The MOSIN is a 5-shot repeating rifle aimed. Manual operation. To close the bolt, you push it forward and rotate it into position. To open it, we do the opposite movement. In front, we have the bayonet mount, a special application which in this model is very stiff. I just noticed how hard it is to attach and remove it properly. I swear it takes 2 people. We had to remove it because it was so stiff at this moment. Just to show you how it can be put on, you insert it and twist. The MOSIN has a fixed 5-round magazine. To go faster, we can push this lever now and have it come out below. Rounds could exit here if I had any, also if I squeeze this part. I can make it come out completely. And this point, this pin where the magazine is held, is a multi-purpose piece. Originally, on the first MOSIN, there was supposed to be the attachment for the sling that you see, but it was moved on the 9130. But this multi-purpose piece, to which it also attaches the base and the magazine spring, has remained the same. The bolt contains many elements that, though they may seem to simplify things, actually complicate weapon operation. Because it had to meet specific requirements, this part connects to the firing pin. So if I pull the trigger, you see how it snaps forward. To cock it again, it is cocked during the bolt opening phase. To put it on safe, pull this piece back. The spring is quite stiff, and rotate it. Like this. The weapon can't fire. The trigger is also connected to a bar that keeps the bolt inside and doesn't let it come out. If I pull the trigger right now, I can simply release the bolt. The cut in the metal, the milling is extremely simple. You make a cut like this vertically and then one horizontally. That makes things a little more complicated because it means the bolt and all its locking surfaces have to be vertical, and that complicates things a bit. To be honest, what I think really kills the MOSIN system, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others, is this piece right here. This is a rail that holds everything together and acts as a guide, preventing the firing pin from rotating accidentally and makes sure everything slides smoothly. Inside, there's just one problem. The MOSIN, in order to be produced economically, had fairly wide tolerances on its dimensions. Sorry for the gunshots, but I'm at a shooting range, and I can't repeat every sentence I say. This whole rail is attached to the rest of the bolt only at this point. I can easily show you that. I adjusted the angle to show you better. We can take apart this shutter to show you exactly what I'm talking about. First, disarm it, release the spring tension, then move the piece forward to take it apart. It slides out. This is the piece, according to many people, that messes up the whole MOSIN system. because almost the entire bolt rests on this slide, but this slide has a range of movement and all the parts attached to it also wobble. Everything has a small range of movement, which makes the bolt quite difficult to move. You need to struggle with it a bit and use leverage. And here it is reassembled, just to show that I didn't break anything. Inside the magazine, there's an interruption system to prevent so-called double feeds, meaning it stops two rounds from coming out of the magazine and both trying to enter the chamber. And for this system to work, you need to properly close the bolt, because that's what releases this mechanism. The bolt's closing precisely controls the next cartridge's release. If you don't do it properly or fully, the next cartridge won't appear in the magazine. Thanks. Here you see it better. The bolt release system, this little piece here that goes down, is what holds the bolt inside. And to move it, I have to pull the trigger even while I'm trying to close it. It resists because everything tries to pivot on that rail and on that piece I showed you. It feels rubbery, and it's even worse with rounds inside, even though there are none now. It's a simple rifle with basic construction, which is why it's not perfect. The Marksman version has some differences, with the most obvious one is the curved bolt handle. If it were straight, obviously it would hit the scope. Instead, this way you can operate the rifle properly, without fear of damaging the optics. The side mount is nice and solid, just as it should be. This is the rifle that also seems heavier to me. It has a lot more wood up front, and it's even harder to use. Holy Madonna, I swear to you, it's not very pleasant. There are bolt actions that are much better and much smoother to operate than this one. All right, now we can try it. It's heavy as hell, it drags you down, it's almost impossible to aim without some support, honestly. It's really heavy, it kicks a lot, it's exhausting, and it hurts.